Pastor Roy Gerhardt from Galloway United Methodist Church in Franklin, Pennsylvania, sharing a few words of encouragement to help us follow after Jesus. I'll bet you've heard the old saying that says that when the boss tells you to jump, your only question is, how high? Well, that's an important idea for us today when we think about following after God faithfully with obedience, because faithfulness has to include a point where we're willing to say, how high? Not question whether or not we want to bother to jump. You see, that's what happens with the people of God in Numbers 13 and 14. This is the point at which they arrive at the threshold of the promised land. They have been journeying for months to get there, to leave slavery in Egypt behind, and to get to the land that God promised them for their home. But when they get to the point where they're just about ready to go in, God told Moses to send in a team, a leader from each of the tribes, to spy out the land, to do some recon so that they know what it's like and what the people are like there. They even want to know what the soil is like and does it grow crops? Are there lots of trees and things like that? Well, these guys go in, they spy around, they bring back samples of food. In fact, they have a cluster of grapes that they have to carry on a pole between two of them. It's so large and heavy. But when they come back and present their report, it's kind of the good news, bad news. One, it's a land flowing with milk and honey. It's beautiful. It's incredible, fertile. There's lots of crops there. It's just a great place. Everything God promised, everything you could dream of. But then comes the bad news. And the bad news is that these people are huge. They describe them as giants, so that they look at them and say, man, these guys are huge in stature, and even more so, they are huge in number. And they've got cities that are huge, and they're fortified. And then these guys start to say, we can't do this. It's too much for us. They're out of the 12 that went in and spied around for 40 days. There are only 2 that are willing to act in faith, and that's Joshua and Caleb. The rest of them are total gloom and doom. They in fact go around in the camp and begin to tell everyone this is impossible, until everyone in the camp rises up to say to Moses, no way, no how, we can't do this. It's impossible. It's too much for us to do. It's too much for God to do. And they refuse to go forward. They actually start talking about going back to Egypt. This has been the thing that has undermined every step along the way, is this will that says maybe we should just go back to Egypt. But look at what these guys have done. They have made a terrible mistake in understanding their mission. I just happened to yesterday have prayed over a young man who is heading off into furthering his career in the Marine Corps, and attended a graduation party for another young man who will soon be launching into boot camp training and joining the Marines as well. These young men, they know that as they enter into the military, that when their commanding officer says go, that their question is not if they want to go, if they feel like it. Their only question is how and when. These men were sent in on a recon mission, and they have mistakenly thought that the question they had to answer was, if we can do it. And so they came back with the idea that they could make the decision. It was up to them to decide whether or not they could do this. It was up to them to decide if they would go into the promised land. And so they came out giving their opinion, telling everyone what they should do. They were not sent in to do that, though. They were only just sent in to check the place out so that they could ask, how are we going to do this and when are we going to do it? Think of Mary when she was called on by the angel to carry Jesus. When she asked the angel a question, it was not a question that questioned the will of God. She simply asked, how could this be? Since I've never been with a man, how am I going to have a child? And then when the angel gave her an explanation, she was ready to say, well, let it be to me, just as the Lord has determined. When you and I are trying to walk out our faith in life, we have to learn, like a young man or woman heading off into the military, We have to learn to ask the question, how high? Not ask whether or not we feel like doing it or whether we want to go and do what we've been called on to do. We'd have to ask ourselves, yes, or yes, ma'am, what is it that I can do? How can I do that? When do you want it done? And when we're following the Lord, I have found that discerning God's will is always hinged on, am I willing to go and do it? Because if I'm not, it seems like finding out what God's will is always seems difficult until that moment when I'm ready to say, God, it doesn't matter what the direction is. I just need to know that it's your will so that I can do it. And then God's will becomes easy to discern, and the challenge is now to step forward and to do it. May God bless you today, and as you share this good news, may God make you a blessing wherever he takes you.